Welcome to Dolby Creator Talks. I'm Ben Givers. This is a show about how creatives use technology to tell their stories. And today I'm sitting down with a true pioneer, mix engineer Kevin Madigan, front of house mixer for legends like Santana, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Lana Del Rey and Smashing Pumpkins, and the first engineer to create a Dolby Atmos live residency with Santana at the House of Blues in Las Vegas. Kevin shares how he carefully built this show with the Dolby team, helping to lay the foundation for what would become Dolby Live at Park MGM, and what it's like to mix one of the most iconic guitar tones in rock history night after night, from deep cuts to classics, retaining artistic intent while reimagining it in Dolby Atmos for generations of fans to experience live. We talk about Kevin's work at the legendary Larrabee Studios in Los Angeles, building out the Atmos room and mixing some of the biggest songs from Santana's smash 1999 album Supernatural, winner of 9 Grammy Awards and one of the best-selling albums of all time. It's a great conversation about craft, innovation, and the responsibility that comes along with honoring a legacy while quietly pushing it forward in new ways. Here's mixing Carlos Santana live in Dolby Atmos with Kevin Madigan. Honored to welcome to Dolby Creator Talks Mr. Kevin Madigan. Welcome, Kevin, and thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, you're very welcome. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you, and it looks like you're currently in Las Vegas at the House of Blues for the latest run of Santana shows, right? Which I think started up again last weekend. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're here just over a week now, and beginning the first run of the residency shows for January here in House of Blues in Vegas, and we have another 3 shows left on this run here, and then a little break at home to catch up on various studio and stuff like that going on there, and then back for more tour stuff with Santana for the rest of the year. We do have about, I think, 3 more visits to Vegas this year here in House of Blues.
Wow, man. So like to work and experience a show like that night after night with a legend, even though I'm sure you're very used to it, it still must be really special. And I'm sure that there is some, significant uniqueness to working a Vegas residency compared to like a touring band being in a different venue every night, right?
It certainly is, yeah. And it's really a very cool show to work on, and really have to sort of remind myself every so often about this is the person that, I saw probably when I was in my early teens on the Woodstock movie. And it's really quite something that Carlos still has the energy and enthusiasm for music that he's had all the way through, and it's kind of infectious for the rest of us to be involved with that. It's really quite something. Yeah,
man, what an honor. And so, like, how has the set list progressed? Is it different from years past? Of course, I'm sure there's that core set of classics that he plays most nights, Black Magic Woman, Maria, Soul Sacrifice, and some deep cuts. Has it progressed? And there's a new song as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with working with Carlos is that, he has the great enthusiasm and energy for this and wants to create and also draw from the past. So you're right, there's a lot of the core things that people expect to hear, and they do get that. And for us, there's always the element of surprise of, oh, well, I haven't heard that one for a while, and something gets pulled out of the back catalogue or completely rearranged for something that we do quite a bit. So it's always kept fresh, and that's a kind of a refreshing thing for us that are involved with it so much. And I think for Carlos too, to actually rework some of these things and make it new for him and for the audience. So every night's a unique experience. You never get really the same. No, never ever get the same thing twice, 2 nights in a row. It's really cool.
That's beautiful. So we're going to get into Dolby Atmos mixing for both live and studio for Santana and other artists in a minute. And honestly, like, you're a pioneer in the workflows of both, but you've got a deep background going back to before Dolby Atmos, working with some legends on the road. Can you share a little bit about your pathway through the industry and who you've worked with?
Sure, yeah. I've been very fortunate to work with some great artists. Starting off kind of back in the early 2000s with Lucinda Williams and Eels, with Smashing Pumpkins, and after that I spent quite a bit of time with Crosby, Stills and Nash, and sometimes Neil Young, and that was a huge thing for me. As again, it kind of goes back to all those records that I listened to and were in the house when I was young, and that formed a huge part of it. So I was quite young, starting with CSNY, but I knew all the songs by heart. That they lived in me. After that, Lana Del Rey, and coming on to Santana after that, since about 2018. And I'm probably missing out on a lot of people in there somewhere as well. But yeah, some great artists, some great music, and a huge variety of styles to work with, which has been just awesome.
Amazing. Wow. What a run of artists there. Yeah. Let's talk about your studio experience a little bit. I want to ask about Larrabee to start with. I'm sure there are other studios you've worked with, but with Larrabee specifically, it was one of the first to equip for Atmos, I think, in 2020. I first visited in maybe like 2021. And shout out to the great Manny American, of course, for being so generous to spend some time with me when I visited. It's such a legendary studio in its current location that goes back even further in previous locations. But can you share a little bit about like the history of Larrabee and how you got involved there?
Yeah, actually, I've been friends with Manny for quite a while, and we had spoken, going back maybe 12 or more years ago, about transforming an existing restaurant beside the studio into what's now Verse, which is almost like Studio 7 at Larrabee, which is a magnificent restaurant in its own right, with fantastic food there by Chef Oscar, but a performance venue that's very unique with a Meyer constellation system. And we spoke about how to do that right, at the level of Larrabee. That's turned out to be something very special. And we kind of just, always had a good friendship and collaboration from there on. I think I started with here in this venue with Atmos stuff in early 2019. We started speaking about it with Mark Tuffy and the team at Dolby, and so we had dug into that pretty deep, getting things working here, and kind of at the same time, Manny was thinking about, or about maybe 6 months later, thinking about, updating Studio 3 into being a full immersive room. And we had support from you guys, and Apple was coming online with immersive tracks support, and you kind of said, you've done a lot of that Atmos stuff, and how about come in here and work with me on some tracks? I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be fun. So it's continued on from there, from early in 2020, and we have a kind of a collaborative workflow, which is absolutely fantastic. And we've done, I don't know, I think over 900 songs or somewhere around there in the Atmos format. Hugely enjoyable sort of trip from starting here in the live end of things in Atmos, to changing the sort of approach a little bit for the studio mixing. So it's been a fun trip in both sides of things with that.
No doubt, and amazing how fast it goes too, right?
Wow, yeah. I mean, when I was looking back on dates, and we started, I think, just talking about doing this venue in Atmos live mixing in August in 2019,
Okay.
and I think in January 2020 we did the first show, so it
Okay.
was a quick turnaround.
Yeah, and so I think you probably know when I joined Dolby in 2018, it was to work on what at the time was what we were doing with Dolby Atmos in nightclubs and with DJs, and we had outfitted a number of small clubs with additional speakers and in venue rendering, and DJs could actually control their Atmos tracks on Pioneer gear and DJ in Atmos in real time. And as you know, there's a lot more to it, but we did like 50 plus parties, and those efforts kind of ended around like the onset of COVID, and thinking back to that in March of 2020. But some of the rendering technology we used there to like enable DJs to play in Atmos would like lay some of the groundwork for what would be used for live Dolby Atmos performances. And got to give a shout out to my buddy Sebastian Palazzo Poo, who was on the team
Oh
at
yeah.
that time with me. And he and I did a lot of the Atmos DJ shows together. And I know you know
Yep.
him and worked closely with him, but he was kind of instrumental in the development of that technology for live that we used in the early days of DJ performances and live performances. I remember, I think when I first met you, it must have been around the time that we were doing like the AMAs and Neuhaus with
Yeah.
Meek Mill and around the Grammys.
Hmm.
So that time around 2020. But how did it go from those kind of early days of experimentation to the opportunity to do it at House of Blues? Was it directly tied to the Santana residency that was coming up, and kind of how did that evolve?
Yes, I mean, we spoke a lot with the team there at HQ in Dolby, and you gave a lot of support and confidence that we could make it work. So certainly Mark and the team poured resources into ensuring that this would be very successful, not just that it would kind of work, that it would actually be a unique and really cool experience for a large majority of the audience in here, which is a difficult thing to do in a live venue. And this isn't the most friendly shape for achieving that, but it was certainly I think, a proof of concept that no matter where we tried to do it, it would be achievable with the right planning and implementation of speaker layouts and audience coverage. So being that we had sort of almost like a lab here for trying things and testing things from day to day, it makes it a good place to do that, as we're not changing from day to day. The kind of, my setup stays in most of the time. And so we could, get our workflows happening within the Atmos sphere of things, and, improve daily, which was kind of what we did, because it was so new, and that we really had to use some not very user-friendly tools at the start, but effective. And the team was very open to improving that almost on a weekly basis. We would change something that'd be an improvement, or we'd talk about how we could go forward with this and make it user friendly for other engineers that didn't have the time to spend prepping for weeks that we did. And I think we really did get there in the end with the team, and Sebastian was very involved with that, and having his background in live too, and understanding what engineers would want, and how to implement the tools for being able to mix in Atmos live on a larger format.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of alluded to some of the work that needed to happen to kind of retrofit the room there. Can you share a little bit about like what gear had to be installed? I mean, obviously like at least one additional speaker stack in the center of the stage, and I'm sure some around the sides. You've got a live renderer happening, which I'm guessing was on like a Dell machine or something like that. I'm sure you had to build out additional, Dante network and things. I'm guessing you were already running Pro Tools in some way for the show, but can you share a little bit about kind of like what physically needed to change in the room, and kind of how you started to integrate that into your workflow?
Yeah, as I was saying, the guys put a lot of work and planning in offline and CAD to implement the speaker design and deployment here. So there was quite a lot, as you could imagine, with the size of the room. And also we do have very separate downstairs and upper balcony here. So really there was, in effect, two Atmos systems working, doing the same thing, but the upper and lower Atmos systems were kind of mirrors of each other. And that was something else to overcome, but it worked quite well. I think Rod spent a lot of time in ease, mapping the room and making sure that we had the right coverage. And then we spent quite a lot of time. Actually, we did I think maybe 2 weeks at the Dolby offices at separate times, one in some of your post rooms and 1 week or thereabouts in the cinema room, trying out how things would work with multi-tracks that we had from live shows, and then being able to take that back in saved sessions for the Digico console and the Pro Tools session. We were using Pro Tools for panning. It didn't pass any audio, but it handled the metadata for panning in the RMU, which was, as you said, it was a big Dell server machine, and the guys had worked on that to kind of change the software quite a bit in terms of latency, and getting that down to where it was usable, because the latency initially for the cinematic or theatrical rendering mastering unit was a little bit too high for us, and they got that down to under 10 milliseconds. So that was part of that infrastructure that they worked really hard on to make work. And then we had to integrate that into the system here, which has I think we had quite a few digital audio protocols running from the MADI from the console to feed into the render. The render then, I think, communicated partially via Dante, and then into the BSS units as well, and AES from me, just to drive local monitors and stuff like that. So it was there was quite a bit of infrastructure in addition to what we'd usually use, and kind of the guys were very supportive, and it was, I think, something very new for everybody to implement it with a live act and make that work in the most efficient and successful way that we could. And there was, of course, with trying so many new things all at once, a bit of trepidation. So we did have a fail safe to go back to stereo, which we never used. Thankfully, that everything, once it was up and running on the first day, we didn't have any problems after that. So it was just a matter of refining things and coming up with new things to do, in the Atmos environment of mixing. And, that was the great thing about then being able to move forward into the creative space of, what else can we do with this? And that was a lot of fun then, when the sort of, the nuts and bolts of all the technical stuff got really put together well, and you kind of had confidence that, hey, this works now. We can really do cool stuff.
And I'm really curious about what those cool things are. I want to ask you about that in just a moment. But you were talking about the monitor feed that you're getting, and I'm curious, what it was that you were hearing. And the band, of course, is hearing a stereo feed in their monitors on the stage, right? And so,
yeah, they're entirely separate. So the only experience they had of it was really to come out and listen to multi-tracks of a show and say, hey, this is what actually happens in the audience. Really sorry that you don't get to experience it, that you have in-ear monitors or wedges, but your audience is having a cool time. So we did actually talk about building a subsystem for front of house that would be a sort of a smaller 714 cage, but it just wasn't really a realistic thing to do. As front of house wasn't in the greatest position here to be in. It was kind of on the edge of the immersive coverage, and we did improve that a little bit. But really, the audience ahead of front of house was in the best spot for that, and well, good for them. But as I say, we had some kind of fail-safe stereo monitoring sometimes at front of house if I wanted to isolate something. But the idea of my own personal 714 cage at front of house, I never got it.
Yeah. Hey, there's still time.
Yeah.
So what was like Carlos and the band's reaction to hearing it like in the venue, like standing on the floor and hearing what it would sound like? Were they all immediately like, they knew it was going to be something special, or was there a kind of a pathway, a journey to getting the approval?
I think it was pretty immediate for them because we had done quite a bit of work, as I said, prepping mixes, especially finishing off that in the cinema room in San Francisco. So we really had something good already. So it wasn't something that was kind of an experimental phase to listen to. So when they came out to listen, there was already a very immersive and good mix going on for the songs, and some of the movements were programmed in there. And so they got to hear something really cool straight away. So it was immediate for them that this is cool. This is fun. It'll be great for an audience. And all right, now you go back to stage and listen on your in-ears.
Hear it in stereo on the stage.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of determine what those creative choices were going to be? You had the fortune and the benefit of having all of that prep time to hear what it was going to sound like in a room. But like, what were the creative choices that you chose to make with different elements? Like, obviously this is a show that's so much about guitar and guitar tone. You've got voice, you've got horns, organs, and pianos and effects. How did you kind of think about where things would be placed? Maybe what would be objects, what would be beds, heights, and surrounds, like the real creative kind of placement decisions?
It kind of came from I think, a discussion with Manny about what we should do in Atmos and what would be the kind of core of what we'd like to achieve in that. And it was to never lose a song and not make it anything distracting. So really that you could step into the song, that, you know, the music felt 3D and you were immersed in it. And we do have a lot of elements, as you said, to do that with it in the Santana band, and within the music. There's a lot of percussion and keyboards and B3, congas. So, you know, bringing that out into a 3D immersive feeling into the audience was kind of easy to do, you know, because there's so many elements, and keeping the core of the, you know, the rhythm section and the important things. The idea was to keep the core of that up front and in front of the audience. And if there was cool moves to do at certain points in a song, maybe it's like a B3 and it can do a rotation around the audience, that it's like, oh, it's a really cool a moment for the audience, but it's not distracting, it's not gimmicky. And it's almost like that, you know, people would, you know, they'd forget that you had this immersive sound everywhere around you. It would probably be, you know, if we turned it off, it'd be a shocking thing, but it was like the audience got used to it pretty quick. And, you know, it just sounded like, oh, this is just a huge immersive mix that's really engaging and magnetic and draws the audience into a song. So that was the sort of thinking, behind of what we could do and would do with songs, is do cool stuff when you can, if it's not distracting, but keep the core of the song. Don't be gimmicky for gimmicky sake and have things flying around the place just because you can. It's kind of like almost in stereo, where you could just swipe the pan knob left and right because someone's doing a solo, but it's like, hey, it's really cool, but Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, because you got to strike that balance, and particularly in a live setting, about enhancing the show for the audience without overshadowing the music, and making sure that the translation of creative vision is still there, and that there's still you're maintaining the tonality of what makes the music so special, and the energy that's created by a live band on stage, right? So there's a sense of
Absolutely,
responsibility
yes.
that comes along with that, and there's so many key moments in a show like this. A lot, I'm sure, around the big hits and the amazing guitar solos. And in terms of kind of like those big moments, or like the B3, are you kind of waiting for an automated moment to happen, or are you kind of riding the faders for a live panning moment?
With that, sort of certainly in the earlier implementation of it, everything was very manual, and because we didn't have really any way to automate moves, so as I was saying earlier, Pro Tools was doing some of the panning for us and movement, and we had a remote control for that and programmed moves, canned moves, if you like, where we would decide, here's what we want to do with a guitar solo for this song. So we're going to just have a one key execution on an iPad for that, and that would fire a macro. It would do the movement, and then go back to kind of home base as a mix bass, which went back to everything is in its immersive positions, back to where it should be again. Later on, with a lot of the work the guys did, that was very automatable with the Dolby Live panning app, which you could even sync up to timecode and have that handle moves automatically like that. We don't run timecode here. Things are more dynamic, and as I say, they change every night, so it just wouldn't work for us. But things became much easier with the live panning app, and we could do movements and panning so much easier then.
Yeah, and so the work that you guys did there at House of Blues, being kind of the first live residency in Atmos, certainly helped to progress our research in the technology, and the team's research. Was really not me, but the team at Dolby. You mentioned Mark, people like Brian and Jonathan and all of those cats, to kind of progress into what would become, Dolby Live at the Park MGM. So I'm sure you were very involved in kind of what could be possible there. And as they were starting to build out that room, the proof of concept sort of that you did there with folks would evolve into what would be, the next semi-permanent installation at Dolby Live, which has been going for 3+ years now.
Yeah, and that I think we were kind of the proof of concept and the sort of the ground zero for takeoff for the technology and development for that, and then to expand that into an even bigger venue with more difficulties that the guys had to deal with so many more speakers and arrays, and they did a fantastic job of the design and implementation of the systems over there. And there's been some really cool shows that have been on over there, and the technology keeps developing in terms of its integration for us in live, and they keep putting more and more work into improving that, and making it easier for engineers to come in and mix in an immersive setting from where they hadn't before. It does take a little bit of work and quite a bit of thinking about it, because it's so many more options than you've ever had before.
Yeah, well, thank you for all of the expertise and time and energy and love that you put into helping to evolve these tools and get it to a point where more people can really enjoy it. And that's really the most important thing, is that the audience is experiencing something that they really enjoy, right? What has been the audience's reaction at House of Blues? I mean, Santana's fans are obviously diehard fans. Not that the fans at Dolby Live for Maroon 5 and Mariah and Imagine Dragons aren't diehard, of course, but Santana, with such a long history touring for 55+ years, what has been the reaction from the fans who have seen hundreds of his shows, maybe, of hearing it in Atmos at House of Blues?
I think it was a unique experience for the people to come in and hear that the music in a new way that, you know, they hadn't been done before, certainly for a big band in a live setting. We spoke to, you know, some people, you know, you didn't want to sort of draw people's attention to it too much of, you know, distract them with technology, but people say, oh, that was so cool. Yeah. You know, there's, you know, those moments where they realize that they're in that immersive, completely surrounded by the music, feeling, and they, you know, they would, make comments about that, and and the clarity went up quite a bit for, you know, it was easier for people to discern things, you know, where it's not just coming at you all off stage. As I was saying, there's a really large percussion setup and congas and keyboards, and we just had such a wider sound stage to play with, and you know, that's unique and enjoyable for the audience, that they're hearing it in a different way, but still the songs are similar in terms of what they, you know, they're not getting distracted by anything. The songs sound like what they want it to sound like and what they're used to, but it's something new on top of that. From people we would talk to about it, they seem to enjoy it quite a lot.
And that's, you know, a responsibility that you also have when you're mixing classic records in Atmos too, right? And let's talk a little bit about, you know, mixing in a studio from a recorded point of view. You've mixed quite a few records in Dolby Atmos, including 3 singles from Santana's Supernatural album. Of course, maybe his biggest, certainly one of his most well-known records in the modern area. 9 Grammy Awards, which is just incredible, including Album of the Year and Best Rock Album. Certainly there's some similarities, but like, how different is mixing a studio record for you than the live approach? Of course, you're going back to, on the prep side, I'm guessing multi-tracks for the studio mixes and needing to do some recreation. But knowing what you knew about the live world, having already had all of the experience mixing with Manny, how did you kind of approach, how are you going to mix the 3 singles on Supernatural?
We still with that sort of core set of ideas that, you know, make it 3D, make it immersive and engage, even more engaging, but don't lose the song, don't be gimmicky and distracting ever, really. If there's room for something cool in a movement, yeah, we're good. We'll do it. If it's something, you know, that'll be fun but not distracting, that it's still part of the song, doesn't take away from it. So getting into that, catalog from the Supernatural album, we were working from multi-tracks on that. So really, we've got the sound of the preamps that it was recorded on. I think it was done at Fantasy Studios on an SSL. So it was really something when we got asked to do it first, a bit of trepidation and what kind of condition are we going to get multi-tracks in? You know, are they going to be well documented? Are we going to spend weeks of, doing audio archaeology trying to piece this together again? But happily not. It was really well documented, put together, labeled, so we didn't have to do too much to get the sessions in working order and ready to mix. But it took quite a while because we had to get back to, you know, basically the stereo mix first to get this sounding. Everything is dynamically right and balanced and EQ'd correctly, and so you're recreating the way I went at it was recreating the stereo mix first and being happy with how everything is dynamically. And then that was the jumping off point for getting into the Atmos mixes for that. And as I said, happily there wasn't too much work to get the tracks together, but, you know, it was kind of surgical, painstaking work to make sure all the sounds are right and that it's the right jumping off point for Atmos first, and getting into that, then the creative fun part started after that.
And there's a wide range of different styles and sounds on this record for sure. And you kind of have that, again, that responsibility to maintain the creative intent of the original, right? But you're honoring the work, of course, not only of the band, but of the original producers and mix engineers, and trying to
Yep.
honor the fans. And so, did you have any collaboration with, any of the original producers or engineers on this as you were kind of doing that excavation process and rebuilding things from the multi-tracks? I guess it doesn't hurt that you've got this long-standing relationship with the band too. You can kind of get to anybody that you need to.
Absolutely. That was kind of a, being very familiar with the music is great for a start, but it's, that was that album came out in 99, and the songs have, for live, certainly have evolved and changed over the years and played differently. It's still very similar, but, there's, the sound now that I have in my head from mixing it since, 2018 is actually quite different than the album sounds, and that was something to kind of reset myself into thinking I've got to get back to the actual the 1999 version of this, and not my 2025 version that we do live a lot. And there's some very significant differences. A lot, the core of it is the same, but it was kind of a mental reset to listen to this very carefully and get back into that. And that was cool because it actually forced me to do some stuff very carefully with some very unique sounds, like the vocal sound at the start of Smooth, which is a very unique kind of overdriven old AM radio sound. I can do this. I get really close, but it's not quite right. And so that was when I got in contact through a friend with Matt Serlatek, the original producer, who ended up being a close neighbor, which was funny. He lives quite close by, and asking him, hey, you did this effect, and how did you do it? What was the original thing? And he's kind of thought about it, and he told me a couple of things, because it's a long time ago and there wasn't documentation. The effect wasn't printed. It was still a clean vocal. And so off I went in search of some old software, which didn't work anymore on a modern Pro Tools system, but we were able to get an old machine and old software and find out that that wasn't it. So then there was a hardware unit that he thought he might have used, and that was kind of closer, but wasn't quite it. So I just dug into it even further with some more modern tools to do it, and found that it was, all right, this is it. This is, I've got it sounding just the way it should sound. And then having Matt to fall back on when I'd finished the Atmos mixes, and Matt works over at Amazon Music now, and went over to their studios to have a listen to the final Atmos mixes with Matt. And he sat down, and I kind of went to the back of the room and like, I hope he likes this, because it's so iconic, and he did such an amazing job in the first place. And so I stopped, and he's like, you nailed it. You really got the sounds right. I'm like, oh, cool. Thank God for that. And he actually sort of pushed me to go even further. At that point, he said, it's, sounding fantastic. And, but, even go further with immersive. I was like, yeah, I can, I've got the push from the original guy who put that together. I think I can go with that. Yeah, I can be even more expansive with this. And so we went a little bit further in terms of how we wanted to push into immersive with Smooth, and it was a great experience to have that and have Matt's input on such an iconic song that he was responsible for so much of in the first place.
Well, it turned out really, really nicely, Kevin. So nice job. And, I heard things that I had never really heard before, both on a speaker-based system and in headphones, and that telephone sort of distortion effect that's really upfront and compressed, but from Rob's vocal that you're talking about that you recreated so
Yeah.
perfectly. And then like when the pre-chorus and the chorus comes in, his voice like comes in full and like spreads out to the side, and you can really hear the difference between what you recreated there and then the the choruses that kind of fill in around you on the side. And on a speaker based system, it was really tastefully done, how it was like very focused and distorted, and then it kind of swung out to the side when the additional vocals came in. But one thing I noticed in headphones that I had never really noticed before, on the second verse, there's kind of these like whispered parts that are kind of like panned hard to one side, and I had never really noticed it. But like in Atmos,
Oh yeah.
you can definitely hear it in the headphones, and there's a lot of separation and distinctness between that. I never really listened to it that closely, like on headphones, but you can definitely hear those kind of whispered ad libs that he's doing.
Did become more apparent, and it was, having the multi tracks to work with allowed us so much more leeway to dig those out, not make them again distracting, but if you're listening, you're like, oh wow, there's something else there, that in the stereo, the main vocal is really your focus in stereo, and it kind of masks everything else that's in behind it. But there's a couple of other things like those whispered ad libs, and being able to bring those out a little bit further. It was kind of fun thing to do. And there was an added benefit to putting in so much work to getting especially that vocal effect right, that I actually just copied it, and now I use it live as well. So it's before it was kind of, oh, I think I've got it, and now I've exactly got it. So the same settings, and happily we're able to recreate it for the live audience, and that's a kind of a fun thing, a double benefit there of putting in so much work to get it in the first place. So thanks, Matt.
Yeah, nicely done. And like, obviously when the song starts, Carlos's guitar with that tone just like hits you straight away. It's like kind of right in your face and really beautiful. And then it seems like the vocals kind of like spread out into the left and right a little bit. But I noticed that like the pianos are kind of in the sides and a little bit in the rears, and some reverb up above. Not a lot overhead, but it's like a tasteful little amount that just kind of like gives it a little bit of extra height and a little bit of extra presence. And one of the other big songs, Maria Maria, of course, I'm sure like a centerpiece of the live show as well, but like such a smash hit, right? And I clearly remember this record coming out. I remember all the singles coming out. I remember the whole record, but of course it was pre-streaming and it was on radio, like every station, every hour on the hour. It was on like the hip hop station, it was on the rock station, it was on the alternative station, like it was everywhere. And rightly so. I mean, like the pocket of that song, like produced by Wyclef and Jerry Wendell, is like, with of course Wyclef, one of the biggest artists in the world at that time too. But like the groove, and like it's cool because it's a Santana track with like a sampled beat, which you don't hear very often. I don't know, maybe he has some other ones, but not many. If so, like kind of like that Headhunter sample as the main groove, which is just really cool. Did you have that loop just alone that you were working with and kind of like laid in as the pocket?
That was it. Yeah, everything we had separately on the multi-tracks, and it was actually that multi-track had so much more production elements that were ever used. So it was when I opened it up, I was, wow, there's a lot of tracks in this, and then started listening. I'm like, that's not in it. No, that one isn't in it. That'd be fun. No, it's like they certainly made the absolute best of that track, and they did a whole lot more work with percussion elements, other production keyboard and sample sounds, but they weren't actually in the song. So, but yeah, we did have that bass sample to work around, and tried to make it maybe a little bit more upfront and modern feeling, just a bit more aggressive, but not a lot. Again, kind of going back to honoring that song. We didn't want to change things too much, but just making it as immersive and engaging as possible. and having that sort of the background from doing it in Atmos here, and having ideas what we could do with the song already, that moved it along at a good pace.
Absolutely. And the lead guitar in that one, that like classic Santana tone, right? Like the really
Yeah.
flat tone with kind of the compression and that singing sustain. It was really nice the
Yep.
way that you had it kind of in the left and the right. And it's really dynamic, and sounds like there's some reverbs there in the heights as well. But I just think like a really, really tasteful way to mix it. So
Yeah, that's really down to Carlos's playing. That's the way it went down onto tape, or I think actually it was digital tape at the time. So, just bringing up those tracks, there wasn't a whole lot of work to do on it. That's how it sounds. That's how he plays. He just sounds just like it should, just how it went down. So there was maybe a little bit of extra immersive reverb, like you said, pushing that out into the heights and surrounds a little bit more. But I think there's 2 stereo tracks from his guitar on that are blended, and that's it. That's him. Much like to how we do live, and people, ask you, how do you get that guitar sound? So I push up the fader. That's what it does. That's it.
That's how he plays it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to get that guitar sound, you've got to get that guy.
Yeah, exactly. He's one of a kind.
Yeah, certainly unique.
For sure. Well, then just quickly, kind of when it comes to like the final QC processes for this, are you doing a lot of checking yourself on kind of various devices? Certainly you're doing the binaural workflow, or are you passing this on to a mastering engineer and kind of letting the label and deal with that side of things? Or is the band coming through to the studio to hear kind of what you've done?
For that, yeah, certainly in the initial mixing stages of that, I'm always careful with everything that I do in terms of Atmos mixing, and how does it sound in headphones? How does it sound in, various types of headphones, in AirPods, and then, maybe I'll check it on the Sonos system that we have, and how is it on that, and making sure that everything translates well. And it seems to be the more we done this over the past whatever 5 years, is that we've developed confidence in that our speaker system translates very well. The mixes done on a speaker-based system are equally applicable to headphones or other devices. We still check it, but it's rare enough that we have to do too many changes to fit other formats. It seems to get better and better for people in terms of binaural algorithms getting improved, or the personalization that's available in Apple Music, or from, I think now there's other platforms that can add personalization, or software that can add personalization for HRTF for people in headphones. So I think that's definitely improved since the beginning of this. But as I say, yeah, we're always on speaker-based mixes, but always checking everything else. And that did, after the mixes were done and approved, they went off to Adam, I think it was, at Sterling for mastering in Atmos. And that brought it, just another step more in terms of quality, and also good to have another set of ears, just ensuring that this is everything's meeting deliverable standards, and that it is translating well everywhere.
Nice. And again, great work. And people can check out your mixes of Smooth, Maria, and also Corazon Espinado, right? Which is also another banger. On
it was just
as well.
Killer tracks to be able to work on for Atmos, as well as so lucky to work on them in the live end of things as well. But yeah, people love those tracks. Like you say, you couldn't turn on the radio without hearing it, a few times during the day when it came out. And certainly a reason for that, and a reason why people still love to hear them.
Absolutely. Well, Kevin, thank you for sharing all of this. I mean, it's really some amazing insight. You've had such a cool journey, always on kind of the leading edge of technology, right? Like working with the biggest artists in the world, but like to give their fans a new experience with Dolby Atmos. I mean, I'm curious, like what excites you the most about like the future of live sound and anything else in the music world that you're working on or looking forward to?
The Atmos advances for how people are able to listen to music has been just a really enjoyable and fun thing to be involved with and pushing forward. I think that it's good for us as engineers to be able to embrace a new technology and a new way of mixing, and really cool for audiences and listeners to be able to hear music in a whole new way as well. Hopefully there's just more and more improvements in terms of how people can listen to this, in terms of on headphones or devices and streaming systems, or all that kind of stuff that are becoming easier for people to own and set up very well. I mean, something like the Sonos system is really, really cool and easy to set up, and it optimizes itself with a routine using your phone, and stuff like that is kind of cool because it allows people then to hear it like we put it together, and artists heard and were really excited about. So that's the sort of the end goal, is that consumers, listeners can just get a better experience and more enjoyable, and that's hopefully where we'll see even more devices available that are easier for people to get hold of, use, and listen to music in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the most exciting ways, and I know you've experienced this many times outside of a studio, is to hear Dolby Atmos in a car. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you're in a space with overhead speakers, perhaps speakers all around you, and it's streaming directly into the car through an enabled service, like integrated into the car, or you can put an Atmos MP4 on a thumb drive. I mean, there are over 30 automobile manufacturers now, including Cadillac, who offer it standard in their 2025 EVs, starting with the optic and going right on up. So that's such like an exciting and accessible way for people to get out of the headphones for a minute and really hear it in a speaker-based environment in the way that it should sound.
Absolutely. And it's somewhere where people are sitting for a reasonable amount of time in one spot. You can't, trying to get someone to do that at home can be quite difficult. And that they have this available now, and I think there's more and more manufacturers that are coming on board with this, and that's really cool. And having heard that done well, it's a very cool experience, and we look forward to hearing more of that, and more and more people being able to, again, just do it easily, that it's just a thing that they can just switch on, and there's no effort, it's apparent, and they're just having this amazing experience without having to try too hard.
All right, Kevin Madigan, again, thank you so much for sharing all of this. And thank you for everything that you've done to further not only the live world for Dolby Atmos, but also like pioneering workflows in the studio, the collaboration that you've done with the teams at Dolby to like make these tools more accessible, more musical, and move things along is just, we can't thank you enough for it. So thanks for doing this and for everything that you've done and will continue to do.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been such an enjoyable experience for me, from being involved at the start here in the House of Blues to going into the studio doing this stuff, and it's been just an inspiring journey in terms of rethinking how I do things, to present music to audiences, to make it even more enjoyable and engaging for them. So thanks to all the team at Dolby for their constant support of this, and in terms of getting us up and running in the live world, and then always being there to answer questions for anything about studio, any sort of requests that we had and making things work better. It's been just fantastic to be involved in. So thank you.
Many thanks to Kevin Madigan for all he shared in this great conversation. You can hear Kevin's mixes of tracks from Santana's Supernatural album on enabled streaming services now, such as Apple Music. And to check out who's playing at Dolby Live at Park MGM in Las Vegas, check out Dolby.com or search for Dolby Live. Thank you for listening. For more conversations with creatives using Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision, check out Dolby Creator Talks on all the major podcast platforms, including the video version on YouTube. The links are in our show notes, or you can simply search for Dolby wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're curious to know more about Dolby Creator Lab, go to dolbycreatorlab.com to find information about all of our programming. There you can subscribe to our mailing list and access the entire library of episodes of this podcast. That's where you'll also find the Dolby Atmos Music Accelerator and Dolby Atmos Learning courses, covering all the topics you need to get started creating and mixing in Dolby Atmos. The courses are always free and available in multiple languages. For other great resources for creatives, check out the links in our show notes below. Until next time, this is Ben Guyvers with Dolby Creator Lab at Dolby Laboratories. You can follow me on Instagram at creatorlab.ben. Our producer and editor is Michael Coleman. Our executive producers are Amanda Schneider and Jack Ferry, with additional editing by Matt Nixon. Our production coordinator is Karen Kahn. Cheers.